There is an official document in the archives of French Freemasonry dated 1785. A name appears in it as the elected representative of the French Masons for a grand convention in Wilhelmsbad, Germany. The name is the Count of Saint-Germain. That would not be remarkable if not for one detail that is about to completely change the way you think about this man. Because German death records state that the Count of Saint-Germain died on February 27, 1784, 1 year earlier. And before this video ends, you will understand why no historian has ever been able to explain that, and why the answer may be far more disturbing than the question. Who was the Count of Saint-Germain? That is precisely the question the greatest minds of Europe spent the entire 18th century trying to answer, and none of them could. There was no birth certificate, no identifiable family, no verifiable origin. What there was a man who simply appeared in Versailles, in Vienna, in St. Petersburg, in London, in Paris, always alone, always carrying jewels of incalculable value, always with the same appearance, that of a man of approximately 45 years, always 45 years old. Voltaire, one of the sharpest skeptics and intellectuals of the Enlightenment, wrote about him with a combination of admiration and bewilderment rarely seen from that merciless man. He is a man who never dies and who knows everything. It was not empty praise. Voltaire weighed every word, and still he found no other way to describe what he witnessed. Casanova met him personally in Paris and recorded in his diaries, this extraordinary man claimed with the greatest ease to be 300 years old, to know the secret of the universal medicine, and to possess mastery over nature. Casanova was himself a worldly man, cynical, hard to impress, and yet he wrote it all down with an earnestness that was not typical of him. But what made Saint-Germain impossible to dismiss was not just what he said, it was what he demonstrated. He spoke more than 12 languages with native fluency, including Sanskrit, Arabic, and Persian, tongues no European nobleman of the era commanded. He played the violin at a virtuoso level that baffled the greatest musicians at court. In the salons of the aristocracy, he described historical events from centuries past, battles, conversations, intimate details of kings dead for generations, with the ease of someone who had been there. French court archives recorded that he never ate in public, never appeared to age, and seemed tireless. Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of Louis XV and one of the most powerful women in Europe, described him in her memoirs with a sentence that is difficult to forget. He possesses a thorough knowledge of all languages, ancient and modern, a prodigious memory, an erudition that can only be glimpsed between the caprices of his conversation. Louis XV entrusted him with secret diplomatic missions. Catherine the Great of Russia received him as an advisor. Mesmer himself, the father of hypnotism, confessed that Saint-Germain had been his teacher. And then came the French Revolution. Before a single head fell, Saint-Germain presented himself before Marie Antoinette and gave her a warning. Not in vague terms, not as a cloudy prophecy, but with specifics. He told her the monarchy would be overthrown, that the king would be executed, that she would die on the guillotine. He gave her the day and hour of her death. He begged her to flee while there was still time. The queen believed him. Those around her did not, and Saint-Germain disappeared, saying he knew he would not be heeded, but that he had tried regardless. Everything he predicted happened exactly as described. February 27, 1784. Local records in Eckernförde, Germany, state that the Count of Saint-Germain died in the castle of Prince Charles of Hesse Castle. For any ordinary mortal, that would be the end of the story. But not for him. In 1785, 1 year after his recorded death, Saint-Germain was seen in Germany alongside Anton Mesmer. Official French Masonic documents elect him as their representative to the Wilhelmsbad Convention that same year. In 1789, the Countess d'Adhémar recorded in her memoirs a lengthy conversation with him shortly after the fall of the Bastille, saying he described the coming events of the revolution as one reading from an already written script. In 1820, she wrote, "I have seen Saint-Germain again. Each time I am left in a state of shock. I saw him when the Queen was murdered. I saw him on the 18th of Brumaire. I saw him on the eve of the assassination of the Duke of Berry. The last time she saw him was in 1820, 36 years after his official death, and he still appeared to be 45 years old." The records do not stop there. In 1835, a traveler described meeting a man named Major Fraser in Paris. The same features, the same encyclopedic knowledge, the same unsettling strangeness. In 1867, documents from the Great Ambrosiana Library in Milan record his presence at a Masonic meeting alongside Cagliostro and San Martin. In 1996, Dr. Annie Besant claimed to have met him personally for the first time. In 2002, 2 French researchers published an account of an encounter with a man who identified himself as Saint-Germain in Paris and who appeared to be 45 years old. Here is what history cannot resolve, and the detail you needed to reach the end of this video to fully understand. There is not a single reliable record of Saint-Germain's origins. No birth certificate exists, no verified grave. The castle where he was supposedly buried was demolished, and the remains, if they ever existed, were never found. The only death document on record was signed by a single man, a physician named Lossow, who was himself a member of the Rosicrucian order. And the records of Freemasonry, an institution not known for errors in its archives, continued using his name after his death, as though he were still alive. The mystery of Saint-Germain is not that of a charlatan who fooled kings. It is the mystery of a man who appears throughout history with too many witnesses, across too many eras, to be simply dismissed. Voltaire may have been ironic, but Casanova was not a man easily impressed. The Countess d'Adhémar was not a woman given to inventing visions, and Freemasonry does not make errors of date by accident. Perhaps the Count of Saint-Germain died in 1784. Perhaps not. The only certainty we have is that his story keeps appearing, exactly as he always appeared, always 45 years old.